Well, welcome back, everyone. Do the New York Rangers return to the playoffs this season? Can Jack Hughes stay healthy for 82 games? And what sweater will Sidney Crosby be wearing come April? Let's talk about all of those things as we preview the Metro Division. Let's go. Coming in at number 8, I do have the Pittsburgh Penguins. 34, 36, and 12, 80 points in 7th place a year ago. Fairly disappointing season for the club. Notable additions this year. Got a few former Bruins in here. Defenseman Parker Wotherspoon, forward Justin Brazeau, defenseman Caleb Jones, Anthony Mantha, forward coming over, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, and Alexander Alexiev, defenseman there coming over. Team also made some trades for Connor Clifton and Matt Dumba, both defensemen. They made the trade with Vancouver for Artur Silovs, who should be getting some time in net this year. And listen, the team still has over $13 million in cap space, according to Puckpedia. So plenty of room to make other moves if they choose to. First round this year, they did pick up Benjamin Kendall, signed him to a 3-year contract at $795. Or $975, I should say. Played in the WHL a year ago, 65 games, had 99 points. So, a good-looking young player right there. We'll see how he develops. Of course, the big change for the Penguins this year is behind the bench. Mike Sullivan era over. In comes Dan Hughes. That era beginning, of course, Sully off to the New York Rangers. But, 5-year assistant for Dan Hughes with Nashville and the Rangers. He was a head coach at the USHL, the Chicago Steel, for a couple of seasons. So does have that head coaching experience. And did, I think, have a championship year. I think it was a 16-17 season for him. They did win that championship. Kind of feels like he's been brought in to help in, like, the, kind of to usher in a youth movement here for Pittsburgh. I'm not sure if they want to use the term rebuild, but, clearly they've got a lot of work to do. And he seems like the kind of guy to help usher that in for the club. But my real question is, how do you rebuild when you have a player like Sidney Crosby? How do we do that? Of course, this is going to be a huge question about the Penguins and about Sid all season. What should Kyle Dubas do? What can Kyle Dubas do? What does he want to do? Really, the bigger question is, what does Sid want to do? He was just interviewed a couple days ago there out in Vegas where, he's holding his line. He wants to stay. He wants to get the team back to the playoffs. Totally get that. He wants to be a one-sweater guy. 1,000% respect for that. Totally get it. Me, as a selfish hockey fan, I want to see him go play for a playoff team because I just truly don't think this team is any place near the playoffs. He's a treasure here in the NHL. He's 38 years old, still playing at over a point per game pace. He's got 2 more years, of course, $8.7 million per season, and a full no movement clause. So, yeah, Sid holds all the cards here. What does he want to do is really going to dictate what happens. Does he finally get to that point where he says, if they get to February and the team is, 1,000 points out of the playoffs, does he say, you know what, I can go win myself another cup in Colorado or in Edmonton or, who knows where else. Maybe I let the team do this, help Pittsburgh out by allowing them to get some assets, and he can go off and try to win a cup. Of course, all the rumors about Colorado are out there. It really just comes down to what does Sidney want to do. Again, as I said, I think there's a lot of holes on this team. They were fairly busy, in July, but more like depth type of moves. Mantha might be the one player that can step up and maybe be a 20, 25 goal guy, perhaps. I just don't see enough here on this club to give me any confidence they can be a playoff team this season. So I do have them at number 8. All right, coming in at number 7 is the New York Islanders. A year ago, 35, 35, and 12, 82 points. They finished in 6th a year ago, so I do have them dropping 1 spot this year. Notable additions here. They picked up defenseman Ethan Bear, goalie David Riddick, forward Jonathan Drouin, forward Matthew Highmore, forward Emil Henneman. That was, I think, through the Dobson trade. And then, of course, they did have a very busy first round in the draft, picking up defenseman Matthew Schaefer. He has signed a 3-year, the $975,000 per season. Very exciting young defenseman here. Going to be a lot of eyes on this kid to see how he develops. Temper your expectations always, right, with these young kids. He's not going to be Noah Dobson right out of the gate. but clearly they've moved off of there, moved off of Dobson, and are ready to kind of build around Schaefer. Obviously, this was a team kind of getting lucky to get that number 1 overall pick, but good on them. I think they hit a home run. I'm really excited to see how Schaefer develops. Again, just as a Islander fan, if you are one, just temper your expectations. There's going to be growing pains with all these kids. We'll see how it goes. They also had picks 16 and 17, where they picked up Victor Eklund and Kayshawn Atchison there later in that first round. So, of course, a new general manager coming in this season, Matthew Darche, really begs a lot of questions about Patrick Waugh behind the bench, and how does this go for him? Does he survive this season? We know that GMs love to have their own guy behind the bench. How patient is Darche going to be with this process? Does he want to bring in his own guy? We've seen Waugh in the past. He kind of has a shelf life, like a lot of head coaches do. But he's now 60. I think this will be his 6th season behind the bench. 365 games for him, 185 wins, 139 losses, 41 ties. That's a 563 points percentage. So he's had some success. It's just going to be really curious to see. Does Waugh survive this season? Does Darche want to bring his own guy? I think it's worth the question. There's some good head coaches available. We'll see how it goes. Another big question for this team is Matthew Barzal. Can he stay healthy? And with his health, can they score enough? This was a team 27th in goals scored last season, 222, tied with Boston. And they've always kind of been the team that's just kind of sort of struggled to produce enough goals. They've always been known for their defense and goaltending. A year ago for Matty Barzal, 30 games played, 6 goals, 14 assists for 30 points. He's only had 2 seasons of 80-plus points. You got to go back to the 17-18 season where he had 85, and then 23-24, so not that long ago, did have an 80-point season. This kid has to stay healthy. He is really the engine that gets everything going. And he just seems like each year he just misses some games and continues to struggle to stay healthy. Even with him healthy, I do question, do they have enough goal scoring on this team? Of course, this time of year, they're all saying the right things. They feel like they're a playoff team. I think they're a bit off. I think they're a bit off of that mark for this season. Of course, Sorokin in net is their all-world goaltender. 61 games for him a year ago. Did have 30 wins, 2.71 goals against it, a .907 save percentage. Slightly lower than his career averages. Still an excellent season overall for him. Are they just putting too much weight on him? Is too much on his shoulders with this group? Again, I think patience is key here. If you're the Islanders, if you're a fan of this team, you've got kind of a slew of young players coming in. You do have to find some goal scoring, I think, for this engine to get going. So I do have them at 7th here for this season. And moving right along here, coming in 6th place in my predictions this year for the Metro Division, we have got the Philadelphia Flyers. 33, 39, and 10 a year ago, 76 points, finishing in 8th place. So a disappointing season for Philly. Notable additions here: defenseman Noah Juleson, forward Christian Dvorak, forward Lane Peterson, a goalie Dan Vladar, defenseman Dennis Gilbert. Also, of course, the trade for Trevor Zegras from Anaheim. Zegras getting 57 games a year ago, 12 goals, 20 assists for 32 points. Absolutely time for a fresh start for this kid. He's still only 24 years old. He's one of those kids that seems like he's been out there forever, but still only 24. Perfect place, perfect spot for him to get a fresh start. First round, the team had the 6th overall pick. They take forward Porter Martone, so good young-looking forward prospect there. We'll see how he develops. And, of course, a brand-new coach behind the bench, Rick Tocchet, coming over from Vancouver. What will his effect be behind the bench this season? He's entering his 10th season as a head coach, 638 games coached for him, 286, 265, and 87 record. That's good for a 515 points percentage. That's, of course, between Tampa, Arizona, Vancouver, and now Philadelphia. I do think his presence makes an impact. He'll bring structure. He's going to demand a physical style of play, a lot like how he played. However, along with that, I don't think he's going to be as up and down, hot and cold as John Tortorella was. I don't know if anybody is. He's probably going to allow these young kids to play a little bit. He's going to allow them to make some mistakes while staying in the structure and playing that physical style. I think, you have to be responsible, but I think there might just be a little more breathing room with Rick Tocchet to allow these kids to develop, naturally as they need to. Big question for the club is who's in net? Who do they got in net? Is Vladar and Ersson enough? Vladar coming over from Calgary, 30 games played, 2.8 goals against, and an .898 save percentage. Ersson getting a lion's share of the load there in Philly a year ago, 47 games, 3.14 goals against, and an .883 save percentage. I do think this might be a trouble spot, and one the team is going to have to address long term to be a cup contender. I don't really see how they get to the playoffs with those goaltenders. I think one of those guys on your team is all right. I do think you need a bona fide number one, and I don't think they have that quite yet. But let's take a look at this youth movement here. Can they take a step forward this year? You've got Michkov at 20, Zegras at 24, Forster at 23, Brink at 24, Drysdale at 23. So all sorts of good, young, exciting players on this group. They've really done a great job of building this thing back up. Maybe no playoffs this year, but I do think there's a lot to like if you're a Flyers fan. You should see some marked improvements this year. And listen, they might hang around that wild card conversation. If their goaltending can play, kind of above their heads a little bit, some of these young kids, start to put the puck in the net a little bit more. Yeah, they may hang around that conversation. I don't see them getting in, but I think there's a lot to like for the future of this club. All right, coming in at number 5, and I really, as I usually do, struggle right around the 4-5 mark because the teams really get so close. I do have the Columbus Blue Jackets coming in at number 5. I wanted to put them higher. We're going to talk about some reasons why. Of course, a year ago, 40, 33, and 9, 89 points, 4th place finish. Just amazing year. I think I didn't expect this. Maybe some people did expect them to be around the playoffs. Didn't miss by much. I just think with everything the team went through a year ago, the fact they played this well and brought that kind of energy, just phenomenal. One of the best stories of last season. Notable additions for the club: Isaac Lundstrom coming in, defenseman Christian Jaros, Dyson Mayo, Hudson Fasching. So some more kind of depth type signings. They do make the trade with Colorado, bringing in Charlie Coyle and Miles Wood, so to give them some good veteran kind of presence. A couple of first-round selections for them. Coming in at number 14, they picked up defenseman Jackson Smith, and at number 20, a goaltender, Pyotr Andreyanov. I think is how you pronounce that. I always struggle with those names, guys. I'm so sorry. But man, I like the direction of this club. I like the leadership. Don Waddell, Dean Evison behind the bench. That is a great 1-2 combo of GM and head coach. Very, very good hands for this group. But let's talk about some of these young guys, starting with, we're heading into year 3 of Adam Fantilli. 31 goals, 23 assists for 54 points a year ago for him, played all 82 games. Big jumping goals from year to year. I think he is just scratching the surface of his potential. I think another 30-goal season, maybe he can get that points total up over 65 or 70 this year. We'll wait and see. And then we've got year 4 of Marchenko. Played in 79 games a year ago. I love this guy. Big physical kid. 31 goals, 43 assists for 74 points. I think he's another guy that probably can, get over that 80-point mark perhaps. I love his game. He's a physical presence on the ice. And then you have year 3 of Voronkov. 23 goals for him, 24 assists for 47 points in 73 games. I like the overall depth of young players. I like their leadership, guys like Werenski. And then, again, some of the guys they brought in this season, guys like Coyle and Wood, who've been around a while and have some veteran leadership qualities. Really want to put this team in the playoffs this year. I still have tons of questions, though, regarding their net. But beyond that, the team has the right young players ascending together at the same time. Decent defensive depth, I think, and a solid core, vets around. If the goalies can play and stand up, I won't be shocked at all if this team pushes their way into the playoffs this season, especially when they were so close a year ago. Coming in at number 4 is the New York Rangers. Awful year for them a year ago, really fell under expectations. 39, 36, and 7 for 85 points, finishing fifth and out of the playoffs. Notable additions here: forward Tyler Radish, defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov, of course, coming over from LA. And then, of course, with that move, they do trade K'Andre Miller off to Carolina, and they pick up Scott Morrow along with some draft capital. No first-round selection for the club this year. And again, another big move, as we talked about Pittsburgh already, is Mike Sullivan coming over from Pittsburgh, joining the New York Rangers. Obviously, his track record speaks for itself: 2 Stanley Cups, but no playoffs for 3 seasons in a row. So, how does he adjust after all those years with Sidney Crosby and the Penguins? Like we hear a lot, I think sometimes just a new voice in a new place can really carry a lot of weight. I think it's good for teams, to have that happen. And I think it's kind of refreshing for a coach to get a new kind of change of scenery in a different situation. Listen, Mike's a guy who knows how to handle veteran star players. He's done it most of his career. He knows how to handle the pressure of high expectations. New York's a lot different from Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh's a huge hockey market. So I don't think the pressure being in New York is going to get to Mike at all. He's so prepared for this. And I do think that just that new voice behind the bench should help, spur some good energy here for New York coming out of the gate. As we know, when we talk about New York Rangers, it's all about Igor, right? It's all about their netminder. Of course, Shesterkin, 61 games for him a year ago, 2.86 goals against, and a .905 save percentage. He's probably the only reason I took the Rangers over the Blue Jackets with that 5-4 split, just because of how good he is, and it's really a trouble spot for the Blue Jackets. And the question we always ask is, are they leaning too much on him? Is he playing too much? Is he wearing down, too late in the season? I don't know. They definitely rely heavily on him. He's paid handsomely for that. You'd like to see them be able to give a little more time off. Now, Quick played really well for the team a year ago. He's been a good backup. We'll see how it goes this year. Keep him healthy. Don't wear him out through the season, and give him some good defensive support. Should go a long way. But when we talk about the Rangers, we look back to last year, we got to ask the question, who bounces back on this club? Because while they've made a few changes, still a lot of that core coming back. Let's look at Zibanejad's season a year ago. 20 goals, 42 assists for 62 points over the 82 games. It's the lowest goal scored since 2016, 2017 for him. Slowing down a little bit in his career, probably. That's natural. But can he get back to 25 goals and 70 points? I think he would take that. What about Lafreniere? A young player, again, decent season, not a bad season for him a year ago. 17 goals, 28 assists for 45 points through 82 games. Of course, that was, however, 17 less goals than prior year. Again, still only 23. Another one of those players that just, you feel like he's been around forever. Still only 23 years old. Still has plenty of room and plenty of runway here. But you would love to see him take a step. 17 goals coming back from 28. Can he be a 30-goal guy? Yeah, he's got that game in him. Can he hit that this year? I think they need to. I think they need to see that out of him. What about Trocheck? Vincent Trocheck, of course. Not worried about him at all. Had a good goal scoring year, 26 goals, but was down in the assists a little bit. 33 assists a year ago, 59 points. Played the whole season, 82 games. I think he was down by about 19 assists from year over year. Is that more a reflection of the team around him and how the team was played? Probably. I'm just not worried about him at all. He's consummate professional. He's always prepared. I think he'll be just fine going into next season. What about Adam Fox? In 74 games a year ago, the defenseman had 10 goals, 51 assists for 61 points. This is his first season under 72 points over the last 3. So definitely a step back year for him. He does have a new D partner in Gavrikov, assuming they're paired together. I do think there's a bounce back for Adam in here. I do think that's a pairing that's going to be a lot of fun to watch and probably going to be really hard to play against for those opponents coming in. And then, of course, we do have the first full season with JT Miller back with the Rangers. Of course, he got the trade behind him from Vancouver, so that's all behind him. That whole situation's done and gone, and he can put that to bed. Can he get back to a 30-plus goal season for himself? 22 a year ago, and what was, a very tumultuous season for him. After having a career high of 37 goals the year prior. So if you're a Rangers fan, are you happy with 30, 55, and 85 out of him coming into this season? I think you would take that. I think you would take that if you're a Ranger fan. I do think they're fighting for a wild card spot. I really do. I think Columbus is going to be right on their heels, along the way. And I think you'll have a couple of teams from the Atlantic nipping at those wild card positions as well. So, unless one of the next three teams really takes a dive, I do think, wild card is kind of the ceiling for the New York Rangers. And coming in at number 3, taking just a small step back from a year ago, we have got the Washington Capitals. Of course, a year ago, 51, 22, and 9 for 111 points. That was good for first place in the division. Not a lot of change for the group coming into this year. A couple of moves. They did add forward Graham Clark. They also picked up forward Sheldon Rempel from the KHL. He had 31 goals, 30 assists for 61 points a year ago. 30-year-old player here, so not a young prospect, but we'll be curious to see how they rope him into the organization. The team did make a trade with Florida, picking up former third-round draft pick forward Justin Sordiff. Got into 43 games at the AHL a year ago, had 34 points. So another kind of depth forward, see kind of how they work him in. They did pick up at pick number 27 in the first round, forward Lyndon Lakovic, I think is how you pronounce his name. So yeah, we'll see how he develops in the system. But yeah, not a lot of moves for Washington, running it back. They're going to run it back, and I guess I kind of don't blame them for this. Really, maybe no reason not to run it back with the kind of team you have. You did get career years out of Dylan Strome, who had 29 goals, 53 assists, and 82 points. Protas, 30 goals, 36 assists, 466 points as well. Career year for him. And then Tom Wilson, kind of maybe out of no place, right? 33 goals, 32 assists for 65 points. He's not just a knucklehead, guys. He can put the puck in the net. So great to see that. It really drove their season, having that many players having career years. Can they do it again? And how worried are we? Because when you have that many guys having career years, there's clearly always some sort of a fallback. Are we worried about that? Is that something we should be concerned with? We're going to have to wait and see. Alex Ovechkin, of course, goal record behind him now. That chase is done. He's got the record, 44 goals a year ago, and was over a point per game. Just amazing to see how this guy continues to bring it year in and year out. Yeah, has he slowed down a step or two? For sure. But the guy still is a threat out there and just a machine, I think a real question for Ovi is what motivates him now? He's kind of done everything, right? He's won a cup. He's got the goals record. I think it's got to be just winning a second cup. It's got to be the motivation for him to come back for this, what might be his last season. Got a great team behind him. No reason to think they're not going to be right squarely in the mix, coming into April. But yeah, you do kind of wonder, is that motivation? Can he keep that motivation up and going throughout the season? I'm sure it won't be a problem for him, but just something to keep an eye on. The goaltending last season, just awesome with the group they had with Thompson and Lindgren, that tandem in net. Both players playing very, very well. Of course, Logan coming over from Vegas, 2.49 goals against and a .910 save percentage. For Charlie, 2.73 goals against and an .896 save percentage. Really, the question here is that repeatable? Can these guys do it again? I think the answer is probably. Logan's had other good years out in Vegas, so this wasn't, while it was an amazing year, he's had other really good seasons, and I think you should expect him to, probably be the number one going into the year. And for Charlie, I think that's just a great backup, goalie to have. I think a lot of teams would be pretty envious and desiring to have that kind of a tandem moving forward. When you look at maybe a key for this team, looking at that third line going into the season, this is kind of their version of a little bit like a kid line, right? Like a real young line here. You got McMichael at 24, Leonard at 20, and LaPierre at 23. So, how this line can contribute could go a long way in taking pressure off that top six and potential insurance. If some of those core forwards that we just talked about, if they step back a little bit offensively, if you can get some good production out of this third line, going to be a lot of fun to watch. Of course, Leonard, played here in New England in college, so a lot of eyes will be on him. He's a really, good, young, exciting player. And McMichael has really just taken off in his career, just become a real solid centerman there. So I think that third line could really be key for this group moving forward. Listen, clearly I expect them to be a playoff team. I don't see them falling all the way back. 111 points again, I don't see it. I do think you're going to have a slight bit of fall off. Maybe less about them and more about the next two teams we're going to talk about. But again, yeah, absolutely a playoff team coming into the season. And the final two teams we have got coming in at number 2, the New Jersey Devils. And of course, that means with only one team left at number 1, we will have Carolina. But let's talk about New Jersey first. Let's talk about them Devils. 42, 33, and 7 for 91 points a year ago, finishing third, holding on for third, I will say. Notable additions here, they do pick up Evgeny Dadonov, forward, and Connor Brown, of course, coming over from Edmonton. Nothing real notable in the trade market. They made some minor trades, but nothing really to speak of. No first-round pick for the club this season. I mean, this is a really easy equation. This is such an easy one. It's all about health, and it's all about Jack Hughes, baby. It's all about health and Hughes. 62 games a year ago for Jack, 27 goals, 43 assists, 470 points. I had, was it a couple weeks ago, I had our new ECHL Maine Mariners head coach on, Rick Kowalski. Now, Rick was an assistant coach there for New Jersey, going back when Jack was kind of first coming up. And I asked him about that. Like, what's the approach here for Jack? How do you keep him healthy? And he was very funny. He said, well, if I had the answer to that, I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. I probably wouldn't be here in Maine. But yeah, we talked about a little bit about that, about just how, maybe, Jack has got to approach how he plays the game, maybe a little more, what's the word? I don't want to say smarter, because that's not it. He's a smart player, but just maybe instead of going into every pile, maybe skating around the pile, maybe trying to do some more stick lifts or things like that. Like, going into the boards in Calgary on a Tuesday night in January, maybe you save yourself for another day, right? So I really think just kind of the question here is, can he transform his game enough to avoid putting himself in those kind of dangerous or precarious situations, right? I'm sure the club is working with him on this, trying to keep this kid healthy. Listen, he's always been a slighter statured kid, but man, wildly talented. And I do think he might be the single most important player to any NHL club going into the season, maybe even more than Connor McDavid. Because, McDavid has quite a good running mate there. I think that what Hughes means to New Jersey probably means more to his club than any other star player does to their club. He's got to stay healthy, man. Not a shocker there. He's got to stay on the ice. If he could be a 40-goal and 100-point plus type of player, I think that's in his wheelhouse this year if he can stay healthy. Give me 75 games. Give me 78 games, something like that. Wrap that boy in bubble wrap until the season starts, and get some guys around him to protect him, make sure he's not getting hit. Beyond Jack Hughes, what does the team get out of Mercer and Meyer this year? Mercer still, again, one of these guys, only 23. Again, feels like he's been around forever. I've said that a couple times today. 19 goals, 17 assists for 36 points in 82 games. Kind of a ho-hum kind of year for him. Can we get something more like a 25, 35, and 60 out of him? And if you're a Devils fan, is that doable? Is that what you want out of him? Can you get that? I think the team is going to need that kind of production out of him, being kind of in that third line center type role. And listen, for Timo Meier, played in 80 games a year ago, 26 goals, 27 assists for 53 points. Listen, not a bad season, not an awful season. And listen, if everything else works well, meaning, health of the team, Jack playing up to par, and everybody else kind of playing up as they should, another season like that on Meyer might be okay. However, given his salary number and kind of the needs on this team, you'd love to see 30-plus goals and a 70-plus season out of Timo Meier. I really hope you see that out of him. I think that could add quite an element to this group. But when we think about a cup run for New Jersey, what's missing? What is it that we can look at and say, oh, they could really use this or that right now? Listen, I like their D pairing. I like their goaltending. I like the additions. They didn't do a ton, but Brown and Dodonov coming in, I like those additions. Beyond staying healthy, however, what's the missing piece here? I kind of look at it, is it maybe another middle six center and maybe a third, fourth line center that can really, give you maybe a little bit more maybe physicality or something like that. I'm not sure. You've got a little over 6 million under the cap, so they might have a little bit of room to make a move here or there if the situation presents itself. So yeah, I think that they're fairly, close to a complete team as I can see. It's all about them just staying healthy and Jack staying healthy. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, of course, last year, this was my Eastern Conference pick. I think I had them losing to Dallas in my predictions. But listen, man, stay healthy. You're going to be right in the thick of the playoffs. And maybe get a couple career years out of maybe somebody like a Mercer or Timo Meier. That could go a long way to make a bit of a run in May. We will see. And of course, as we already noted, coming in at number 1, the Carolina Hurricanes. Of course, I famously had them out of the playoffs a year ago. So what do I know, right? But 47, 30, and 5 for 99 points last season. They finished second in the division. Notable additions, they had a big one. They caught the big fish. Nikolaj Elhers coming over from Winnipeg, 24 goals, 39 assists for 63 points in 69 games out there for the Jets. Signed a 6-year, $8.5 million per season contracts, and tons of expectations here for Nick. How does his game translate into this Carolina style of play? I do think it's worth asking where, when other goal scoring forwards have come in, and they've had a couple of other big names come in over the years, it hasn't always been the best fit, right? So, listen, I guess I'll say this. Nick was being recruited by a lot of teams. I don't think he signs there long-term unless he has a pretty good idea, working understanding of how his game's going to translate, how he's going to be used, how he's going to fit into the group. So I do think he probably is going in with a fair amount of knowledge as to what it's going to look like and feel like. Listen, expectations, 30, 50, 80, 30 goals, 50 assists, 80 point kind of season for him. I think that's a reasonable expectation in year one. So like I said, he was really the big fish they got. They also did sign defenseman Mike Riley. He comes over, and then they did make a couple of trades, trading for goalie Caden Premove from Montreal. And then, of course, the big trade, K'Andre Miller, coming over from the New York Rangers. No first-round draft selections for the team, not a problem. My questions here are, is this their best chance at a Stanley Cup? Is it right now? I think so. I think it might be. The roster experienced some losses a year ago, and they did far better than I had expected, overcoming all the changes they had. Looking at this roster today, right now, they seem very well positioned from a forward depth perspective, from a D-line pairings perspective, to go on a long run here this spring. They got to get over the hump, right? They got to get past that Eastern Conference final hurdle. Looking at their top line, though, when you have Aho, Elhers, and Jarvis potentially as a top line, this should be magical out there. Absolutely magical. This line, having Elhers there, is going to take a whole lot of pressure off of Sebastian Aho's shoulders. And I'm betting we see Aho, get over 35 goals and maybe be a 90 to 100 point guy this year. He was down a hair last season, 29 goals, 45 assists, had 74 points. And I'm betting on a little bit of a bounce back from his numbers from a year ago. And then you got Jarvis on the other side. You might have a line of 3 guys all over 30 goals this season. Could be a lot of fun. Listen, I'm sure Rod is going to play around with this top 6. Maybe you move Elhers down to a second line situation, move Svechnikov up. We'll see. I'm sure they'll be playing around with that in the preseason. Regardless, there's just a ton to like here. And for the first time in a long time, people, I believe the Hurricanes may have an offense that can actually match their defense. This has always been known as a defensive team. I think they finally have an offense that, and again, taking nothing away from their offenses in the past, they've never been this juggernaut offense. I think now they might actually have potential to be considered that and to maybe be feared a little bit offensively, where they haven't been that over the years. Going back, though, to a year ago, of course, the Rantanen trade and the mess that caused it, the trade from Colorado. Listen, I was critical of the team and how they, traded for him and then kind of didn't realize, oh, he didn't really want to be here. But I am very impressed. You got to give them full credit for how they navigated that whole situation. I do think they miscalculated a little bit in making that trade with Colorado, but I'm going to give Tulsky credit here, their GM, for recognizing the fit wasn't there. He didn't let this personal ego get in the way of the team, and he pivoted quickly into acquiring the 22-year-old forward Logan Stankoven from Dallas. Listen, Logan's still a young, developing player, but tons of upside. I think you're going to see a lot of that upside this season, coming into his first full season now in Carolina. And listen, Rantanen, he's going to be fine in Dallas. Everything's fine. So it worked out great. Give them full value, full credit for making a mistake, pivoting really quick, not dying on that hill, and moving on. So good for them. But can this team unseat Florida? That's really the big question I have. Can they be the East champ this season? Listen, I believe they have the best chance to do it. I think they have the best chance of knocking Florida off the pedestal. I really do. I don't see anybody else better positioned than them. Some concerns I might have right now, maybe the one chink in their armor might be the goaltending. I do think there's some concerns here, perhaps, right? Listen, Freddie Anderson's great. He's just never healthy. I mean, if the guy can stay healthy, he's a very, very good, very capable goaltender. But we've just gotten to that point with him where you just fully assume he's going to get hurt. I hate to say it, and I hope I'm wrong this year, guys. I really hope I'm wrong. It'd be great to see him have a full season and stay healthy. You also have Kochetkov, who's, I'd say, still a little bit unproven as a number one, kind of bona fide number one goaltender. So like I said, this might be the one little chink in the armor for Carolina. Listen, the team did sign Caden Primo from the Montreal system. He had a great run at Laval in the AHL a year ago, 1.96 goals against and a .927 save percentage. I have no doubt he's going to get a lot of preseason looks. I bet he factors into this equation somehow. The team does have over $10 million of cap space currently. So, we get to December and the net's still kind of an issue. Maybe he has some injuries. They will have the financial flexibility to make a move for another goaltender. Really, the question will be, who's available and what teams are looking to make moves. So, we'll see how all that goes. But yeah, I mean, cup contender. Yeah, absolutely a cup contender. I haven't made my full playoff predictions yet, but the Hurricanes are very high on my list as potential Eastern Conference champs for this coming season. We will see. We will see how it goes. Florida can't win it every year, man. They can't win the East every year. They've won it 3 years in a row. We're probably due to see somebody else, but we will be talking about the Atlantic Division next, so we'll have plenty to talk about as it pertains to the Florida Panthers and the rest of that Atlantic Division. So everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening today. If you're already subscribing to my channel, thank you. If you're new to the channel, thank you. I really appreciate that. If you haven't done so and want to stay up to date on all the upcoming shows that I have here, hit that subscribe button down below on your screen. Definitely helps me out. And until next time, everybody, be kind, show love, and God bless.